Okay, hi everyone. We are once again with the avatar. Thanks very much to Dan and Callum from Skills Forward for giving us this opportunity to understand how we can do this better through this process. I'm the Chief Executive of the Institute of Employability Professionals. Probably everyone who's been on these webinars before already knows that, so quickly on. Welcome to the IEP webinar series. This is the 14th webinar now in our Live Learn Lunch series in partnership with many different IEP partner organisations and its members. This is the first of 3 webinars in a mini-series from our colleagues at Skills Forward. This week's webinar is entitled Maintaining English and Maths Delivery Remotely and is brought to you by Dan and Callum, as I said, from Skills Forward. For those of you that are fortunate enough to see the rest of the webinars in this series, you'll know that we're in for a treat today. We have an excellent webinar program for you over the coming weeks, looking at subjects like coaching, employer engagement, online learning, suicide prevention, mental health, virtual first aid, and lots of other different things. So hopefully you'll engage with those. And if you enjoyed some of the previous webinars with the Better Health Generation, happily they're going to be back in a couple of weeks with a mini series of webinars around the challenges of returning to work and the new normal. So watch out for that in the IEP Learning Network e-bulletin. The last thing I want to say is thanks again to Dan and Callum. Really great that you're here, and thanks for putting this on for us. Please everyone stay well, stay safe, and get chatting on the chat link down at the bottom of your screen. Make sure you put it on to everyone, as Helen said, and that everyone can see your comments. It'd be really great to hear where you're from, what you're doing, whether one of our colleagues is hanging out at the washing today, which has happened a few times. And remember that this and all our webinars are recorded and available on the IEP YouTube channel, where you can subscribe. Please press the button to subscribe and you get to know everything that's going on. So over to you, Dan. Thank you very much.
No problem. I will try and share my screen. So hopefully, can you see that?
Not yet, no, but it may be taking a moment to come up.
Yeah, I'm down to...
So while we're just waiting for that screen to come up, if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to ask Dan and Callum today, please feel free to pop them into chat. And as usual, what we will do at the end of the session is we'll make sure that those questions are picked up and they're handed out.
It's saying I've clicked share screen and selected my slides, but
okay. Okay, well, what we will look at doing for you is, let me see.
You made me presenter, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Okay, just bear with me one moment. What I'll be able to do for you, Dan, is let me share those slides for you.
Right, hold on, it might be.
Right, we've got it now.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well done.
Needed the technical assistance of a colleague. Okay. So here we go. So I'll give you kind of a brief introduction to Skills Forward, and then we'll go into a more technical kind of platform view in terms of how we can manage maths remotely, interpreting the assessment results and how that translates into what we call an individualised skills plan, and then how learners can progress through that individualised skills plan using online learning resources to help them acquire additional knowledge and skills in relation to English and maths. So Skills Forward, we're one of the UK's leading e-learning assessment solutions, and that covers skills, GCSE, apprenticeships, employability and digital skills. We are celebrating, albeit in lockdown, our 15th year anniversary this year, having provided e-learning assessment solutions since 2005. And really proud of what we're doing across the sector in terms of our products and services and the way we've been able to support training providers and our customers during the current kind of pandemic crisis in order to help them maintain their delivery and keep provision going. We are predominantly used by colleges, independent training providers, as well as employers who want that accurate visibility of learner progress, and we do that across a variety of work-based learning programs, and we support that by digitally capturing evidence of a learner's skills from just the starting point of the initial assessment throughout their learner journey in terms of how they acquire knowledge and skills and progress through our curriculum content online in order to prepare them for their end assessment and exam. Last year, we provided just over 2.9 million assessments to learners across the employability and skills sector. And again, that was a real testament to the technology that we use and the adaptive assessment methods that we use in terms of being able to articulate a learner's baseline and starting point in order for them, customers and providers, to be able to measure progress from starting points and meet all of their regulatory requirements such as ESFA, as well as Ofsted requirements, to make sure that that learner is on the right programme and is progressing through the curriculum at the right pace. On average, according to the 18-19 National Achievement Rate tables, on average our customers do experience higher achievement and retention rates for their learners. And what we've seen, particularly around training providers and colleges, is that participation in learners increased. And we're able to run reports in the background and analytics to show participation in learning, what would be classed as outside of normal study hours. And because we have an app and access to the platforms 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, learners can progress at their own pace throughout that curriculum content in terms of how they work through their studies. And I think given the situation we found ourselves in as a sector, the traditional methods of teaching and learning and an assessment will look very different moving forward. And we're doing, moving away from what would be that traditional face-to-face classroom-based teaching and learning. I think, what's going to come as a natural consequence of the situation is different ways of delivery, and blended learning and distance learning becoming more and more the norm. And so we're, proud to be able to support that with our online content, all of which has been written by subject matter experts. All of our content is aligned to reform standards. So for functional skills, for example, all of our curriculum and assessments and resources are all written to the new 2019 functional skills standards. All of our GCSE content, again, against the new standards of 1 to 9. Our digital content, we're soon releasing a new package within Skills Builder for essential digital skills, because that's the latest governmental entitlement, and it was nice to see that within the recent adult education budget funding rules, in terms of everyone having that digital entitlement. So we're looking forward to releasing the new essential digital skills assessment and learning resources onto the platform next month. And then we also have functional skills IT, which sit within the platform, and that'll be replaced later in the year with the new digital functional skills that come into play. And we also cover other areas such as learning styles, personal learning thinking skills, and ESOL. And we're seeing a larger demand for ESOL and a different method of delivery for ESOL curriculum. So again, making sure that our assessment and those resources are robust to be able to manage that distance blended approach. So one of the things that we're going to look at today is Skills Builder, and Skills Builder is what hosts our initial assessment, diagnostic assessment and learning resources as a solution to support English and Maths delivery predominantly. And again, that touching on what I've said, covers functional skills and GCSE. It does incorporate Ofsted and ESFA compliant assessments and detailed skills diagnostics, and the video tutorials, all the progression tracking that sits within the platform, as well as all of the learning resources that aid that skills development and does, from an employer's perspective, increase workforce productivity. In some of the key kind of features of Skills Builder, which is one of our products, the English and Maths, whether it's GCSE, functional skills, ESOL and digital, we can support all of that content, right from initial assessment through to summative assessment. It is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so learners can progress through that at their own pace, or with support from tutors, do that as self-directed study, where you can set targets and things like that in the platform. As I've said, it's been developed in line with reforms, so we're confident that all of the content and the curriculum does prepare people appropriately for their end assessment and exam, and probably more recently, a lot of the work that's been done on grade estimation within vocational and technical education, because we know a lot of exams have been cancelled. So providers have been able to use our platform in terms of seeing where a learner's knowledge is by topic area, not just by subject, in order to support that estimation exercise that's taken place. It's also from a progression tracking perspective in terms of the quality of your delivery in teaching, learning and assessment. We can measure progress from starting point, the acquisition of new knowledge skills, and you can break that down by topic and level. So, you know, as a performance management tool, you can use this platform and all of the reporting and the analytics that sit within the platform to be able to measure at a learner level, and then up the hierarchy right through to institutional level in terms of the progress of your learners as well as their participation in learning. And that's a brief intro from me. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to Callum, who will be able to go into the platform and give you a bit more of an insight as to how it looks and how we use it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dan. I do have a couple of accounts that we made earlier to use our current statement. So I'm going to start sharing some screens. We'll give you a guided tour of the product that is Skills Builder. So we can look into how you can continue with remote delivery of functional skills, using the software that is Skills Forward. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen now. So as you'll now be able to see, you can see a Skills Forward login portal. Now, I will birth the session by sort of giving an introduction to the product, and access is always granted by username and password, much like any other electronic platform. In terms of the accounts that I have sort of ready to showcase to you today, we have it from a learner perspective and a tutor perspective. So you can get a firm understanding as to how the learner would operate their account and what they can expect when they get logged in. And then how the tutor can sort of administrate that support in terms of getting a hold of that learner journey and getting some sort of steer as to what direction the learner should be, gearing towards. So in the event I was a learner on the Skills Forward platform, I'd be able to be enrolled to any of the following courses, whether that's functional skills, English, maths or ICT. And that of course is all reform ready, and it's mapped to, multiple sort of organizations, edition of the functional skills. So it doesn't matter what awarding body you're with, the criteria is mapped to apply to absolutely every awarding body's edition of functional skills. So as a learner, you'll be able to use your username and password on the login portal and gain access to an account that looks like this. Okay. And if an individual was to ask me what can learners do on the platform, I would say that would consist of 2 permissions. Okay, the first permission is to access assessments and obviously complete them to the best of their abilities. Now, once the assessments have been completed, bespoke resources will be generated. So it's expected of the learner to actually practice these resources and retain the relevant skills to be put through for their exam, because that's the desired goal at the end of the day, isn't it? Okay, so what we're going to look at is how a learner would access those 2 permissions, how they would take the assessments, how they would practice resources, and then we'll get logged in from a tutor perspective to sort of, tie the process right from the beginning until right at the very end. So permission A is accessing an assessment, and you simply gain access to your account and select the relevant subject tile of the assessment you want to take. So in the event it was maths, you click the icon on your home page and you'll be met with an introductory video. Now, this introductory video is just designed to soothe any initial anxieties that learner may have. So it goes into detail about the fact that it's an assessment and it's not an exam. So if they don't know the answer to a question, we do advise that they bypass that question, as we need a really accurate understanding of their capability level prior to any learning. The screen that you can see in front of me is the assessment engine itself. So as you can see, you've got a header, a footer, and the question in the center of the page. I'm just going to start walking you through, the different aspects on the page. So as you can see in the bottom center, we have a progress bar. Now, I love Skills Forward, so I can talk about it all day long, but I imagine from a learner's perspective, they might have some sort of query regarding how much longer the assessment they need to complete. So this can all be done remotely, as long as you can access the internet on an outlet like Google Chrome or Internet Explorer. You'll be able to use your details on the following login portal and get access to your assessments no matter where you are in the country or the world, actually, because access to the platform is global as well. So for those learners that maybe they got trapped abroad through this coronavirus situation, they would still be able to practice their functional skills. So there's no excuses at all. Okay, so if you are working with any disadvantaged learners, in order to remove the disadvantage straight away, we've built some settings into the platform that you can implement to make your life and the learner's life slightly easier. So if you are working with any dyslexic or colorblind users, please be sure to implement these settings on the platform in order to make the experience the best experience for every single user. If you're working with any ESOL learners, in order to remove the need for a scribe, because of course you won't be able to have a scribe remotely in the current uncertain times, you can select the autoplay audio option that will read every single question to the learner and let them know of the possible answers that they can select from. Okay, so it doesn't matter what type of a user you are, there's no disadvantage that will stop you from using the platform. We've already taken that into account for you. The learners will progress through an assessment series of screening, initial assessment and diagnostic. And after that is completed, they will be generated some bespoke resources to practice. So that's the second component that I'm going to move into just now. So we've got component A, which is the assessments that we can access by pressing the relevant actions column on my home page, and I can implement some settings in order to remove the disadvantage for those learners. Now we're all aware, once the assessments have been completed, a list of resources will be generated for that learner to practice, and that's in the form of a skills plan. Okay. If I was to open a skills plan, you can see the list of resources that the learners will be assigned to, and they may be at various different levels depending on that learner's capability. Okay. You'll be given a continue button in your actions column that you'll be expected to click in order to activate the resource itself. And at Skills Forward, we have quite sophisticated and advanced resources that vary from interactive videos to written pieces of text to pre-recorded videos of actual college assessors delivering lessons to their learners. So, there's a flavor of everything in our bank of resources. The learners will be expected to press continue, be met with a physical resource and complete a very, very short summative assessment after interpreting that resource. And they need to score 70% or more correct at that particular summative assessment to get progress on their individual skills plan. And I think it makes sense to us all at this point that the aim of the game is to practice as many topics as you can, retaining as many skills possible from Skills Forward and the resources that we have. Okay, so that's just a sort of brief introduction to the product itself. As we can see from a learner perspective, we can take assessments and practice resources. Now, just to sort of tie the experience together, what I'm going to do now is log out from the point of view of a learner and log in from the perspective of a tutor. And then you can see how you can assist this process remotely. And, that's in relation to interpreting assessment results. So we can actually see what these assessments are providing us with in the credible data and how we would go about using that. You can add targets for the learner, so you get some sort of control over their learner journey, and just general supervision, making sure that that learner is getting the correct support and that they're understanding the content that they need to be understanding. So as promised, I'm going to log out from the perspective of a learner and log in from the perspective of a tutor. And just to reassure everybody, there's no difference in permission. So access to the platform is always granted by username and password. It doesn't matter what type of user you are, you'll always have to use those details, okay? So as a tutor, you can use your username and password and gain access to the Skills Forward portal. Now, your Skills Forward portal will allow you to access all of your learners' accounts, see how many assessments they've actually recorded, and see whereabouts they are in terms of progression on the skills plan. So it's a really powerful tool for your organization to use in these uncertain times to keep, close-knit watch with your learners and assist them with that learning. It makes it more than just a team session every now and again. So as a tutor, your main responsibility will be to view your caseload of learners and see whereabouts they are. So I'm going to do exactly that for you now. First, I'm going to click administration. I then click user and I click list of students for teacher. As you can see, it's a really easy product to maneuver around. That's a matter of 3 clicks and they all made sense. It's an administration task. I want to view users, and list of students for teacher is going to do exactly as it says on the tin. So in terms of training, you will have complimentary training as part of access to the platform, but it's so simple to use. I'm sure you might end up training me in the end. We've had that before. Access to the platform will always come with training guides and the ever sort of, lasting offer of complimentary webinars. So you'll have quite a sophisticated account management process in which you'll be able to utilize quite heavily. So, just to give you an example, I got a phone call of a client this morning saying that they needed some training regarding groups. So we managed to turn that around on the same day, a couple of hours after receiving that call. So it's not like we, sort of wave goodbye and wish you independent access to it. We will hold your hand throughout the process to make sure that you know everything you need to know in order to operate the platform. Linking back to the platform, I am going to view my list of students for teacher to get that information for that remote learning. And today we're just going to look at Learner Richard, as I know that's an account that we've got existing with quite credible data on there. We'll click View User and we can see the generic information assigned to this user, such as the first name, last name and general details, and the courses in which they're assigned to. And as I said, 9 times out of 10, that will be functional skills, English, maths and ICT. We're going to view the results of this individual, and here we'll be able to see the assessment series that I've been referring to throughout today's session. Okay, when you assign the courses to the learner's account, you're essentially agreeing that they're going to do a screening assessment, followed by an initial assessment, and then we'll finish off with that diagnostic. Okay, so we're going to take a couple of moments to open each assessment attempt and show you exactly what information you're being presented with as an organisation. The first assessment, which is a screening, will give you a really basic understanding of that learner's overall working towards level. So, it's quite a powerful tool. You can create your learner's account, they can get access to it remotely no matter where they are in the country or world, and they can get an assessment that will give you a really basic understanding of their overall working towards level. Okay. They will then progress onto an initial assessment, which is much like the screening, it's just in a lot more depth. So as you can appreciate, we split the course into 4 different components, that being reading, composition and grammar, punctuation and spelling. The learners will undertake questions in these particular sections that will start from the lower level and progress up and up and up until the learner cannot answer anymore. We'll take an average on all 4 of the components to give you your overall working towards level, and then you can use that data for the initial assessment score of that individual. Or of course, just as a bit of motivation as to what will be the next steps for this learner. Now, the average time taken for this assessment is half an hour depending on learner capability, so it's quite a speedy process in the grand scheme of things. After the completion of the IA, the learners will then be expected to complete a diagnostic assessment. Now, I'll start off by saying the diagnostic assessment will already be set at the level that was gauged in the initial assessment. So as you are overall working towards level 2, as a learner, you'll progress onto a diagnostic assessment that's already preset at level 2. Okay. If somebody was to ask me what a diagnostic assessment does, I would say it looks for weak areas in a learner's knowledge. Okay, so that's looking for weak areas in a learner's knowledge. And just to sort of, use my own addition of how I interpret this result, I would say, okay, so you're overall working towards level 2. The system's going to ask you some questions in relation to that particular level within that course and see if you're still holding that level of capability. For comprehension and comparing text, we managed to keep that 100% capability, so we won't be assigned any resources in those areas because we've already got the proficient knowledge to answer correctly. When we progress on to language features and using glossaries, you can see the learner only actually got a score of 50% and 33%. So the remaining percentage, in order to help the learner sort of obtain the skills to be able to answer correctly, we'll take that data and use it as influence to assign the resources. So the individual skills plans are all bespoke and they're all based off the information that's gauged in the diagnostic. Okay, so just to reiterate myself once again, the diagnostic assessment will look for weak areas in a learner's knowledge and use that information to assign resources to that learner's profile that are designed to fill the gap analysed in that learner's knowledge. Depending on your learning style as a user, you'll be able to interpret this information using 2 different formats. You've got the black and white table, which just gives you the data that you need, and it's almost like a one-stop. And then you've got the interactive graph that sort of incorporates a RAG status, and it's really intuitive in terms of percentages and when you hover over it. So as a tutor, we do appreciate there's 2 different types of tutor out there. Depending on your learning style, you should be able to interpret this assessment result really easily. Okay. Now, that is the assessment series, and if anybody's formed any questions as a result of interpreting that, you know, you can put a chat inside the chat box or get in touch directly afterwards on outlets that I will relay to you. So, you know, just to summarize, really, you can get access to a screening assessment, initial assessment, and a diagnostic assessment remotely. They'll tell your learners overall working towards level prior to any learning and look for weak areas within that particular level. Okay, we'll use that information to assign an individual skills plan that you can also access as a tutor. But from the learner's perspective, they'll be sure to continue the topics, practicing the skills and retaining them to the best of their abilities. So it's quite a powerful tool. So if you are interested, please be sure to follow up. It's really essential, and I know how much it can help your organisation, especially when it comes to the individual skills plan section and that sort of side of things. So no, I'm not criticising the product at all, but we all know with electronic platforms, when it comes to learning, it gives the learner the ability to wake up on any given day and they decide what topics they practice. So if I was a learner on the Skills Forward platform, I can wake up and decide today I'm going to practice spelling, and then I'm going to practice composition, and there's nobody that's going to tell me otherwise because I've got access to the platform. Well, we appreciate as a college or a training provider or somebody within the sector, you're going to want some sort of control over what the learner practices and when they practice it by. So we've sort of taken that into account at Skills Forward and given the option to add a target that the learners will be able to interpret and follow your instruction to make sure that they're on the exact same page as you are in terms of what's expected from them. So as a tutor, if you wanted to, specify the next time I see you, I want you to practice comprehension for that learner, you can do that remotely in terms of adding a target on the Skills Forward platform. And that's just by taking the following steps. You click the green Add Plus, you'll give your target a title, and that might be something as simplistic as target 1. We don't want to overcomplicate it. And then we'll go into detail about what we actually wanted to complete. Okay, so we're already starting to populate some credible data straight away. We'll then give a status of this particular target, which would always be set. It's quite difficult to complete a task without being met with the target itself. But if you did want to document work that the learner's done, that's also, possible via this tool. So after I've specified the title and details of this particular target, I can specify actual, activities that it relates to. Okay, so after I press save, update at the bottom, the next time the learner gets logged in, they'll get a pop-up notification in the middle of their page that will hold all of the data that I've just specified there, okay? And that will then feed directly onto the resource that I've related it to. So the learners, won't find themselves bitting and bobbing in the platform. It'll all be an automated process as of receiving that target. They interpret the task, and they're straight into, the content as a whole. Now that is a lot of the product's functionality. So as long as you understand, that you can get initial assessments, diagnostics, and resources, we're pretty much in the same boat. Now, just to sort of follow on from that briefly, you're going to find yourself in a position where your learners are completing 100% learning progress. So you're going to be asking yourself at that point, well, what do I do with my learner now? I've set them up on the platform, they've completed their assessments, they've practiced all of the resources. What's the next steps? And that's where you would make, one decision or the other, to be honest. So the first decision is, I want to clarify that the learners actually retained these skills. And in the event they have, I want to put them through for their exam. Okay, so that's obviously option A. Now, option B is, I want to clarify that the learners retain these skills. But we know sometimes the learners don't retain the skills as we want them to. Because as we can all appreciate, I can ask you a question today that you can get correct, and I can ask you the exact same question in 2 weeks' time, and you may not get that correct. And that's because information does get displaced. The human brain can only hold X amount of data, so the more you obtain, the more is displaced. And that's the exact same with the Skills Forward platform. So when you find yourself at 100% learning progress, just to double check that that learner has retained all of the relevant information, I would make them scroll to the top of their page and do a distance traveled assessment. And that will do exactly as it says on the tin. It will calculate the distance that this learner has traveled since they took their first diagnostic assessment. Okay. After opening up the score, as you can see, it's a very sort of similar fashion. We've got the RAG status, which is really good for the likes of Ofsted. They love a good RAG status. And you've got the relevant percentages in relation to that particular topic. So you can get up the first diagnostic attempt that they ever taken and compare the two just to make sure they've made the relevant progress to be put through for their exam. So for this learner here, I can see the overall working towards score, is 59% level 2. That means they've got a really firm understanding at that level. So as a tutor or an assessor, you may actually want to make the decision to put them through for their exam because you feel that's appropriate for them at this stage because they made the relevant progress in that particular course and level. Now, in the event that's not the case, and they've sort of, they practice their skills plan to the best of their abilities, but for whatever reason, the information has been displaced. It's not always a negative situation. Something may have encountered in their own personal lives that would distract them from the course as a whole. So we have to take things like that into consideration. So if they do need to unlock further resources to practice before we're confident enough to put them through for their exam, you can go back to their profile page, in through the results button, and you'll be able to see next to every single subject you have an add attempt button. And, that's not going to do a million miles different to what it says on the tin. It will literally add a new attempt for that learner to actually gain access to. Now, as we've discussed, the diagnostic assessment is what decides the resources. So it doesn't make sense to add a new initial assessment. What we're going to do is add a new diagnostic and set the levels of that diagnostic to be the level above what the learner was working towards previously. And I'll just show you how you do that now. First, you'll click Add Attempt. You'll then go to the diagnostic section. You'll add an actual assessment diagnostic, as this is the particular diagnostic that will assign resources. After the attempt has been added, as you can see, we have a set levels option. And we'll be able to gain access to that and see the last level that the learner was working towards in their particular ISP. Okay, so the last level was level 2. Now I'm going to skip that section because I think the learner's proficient enough at that particular level. So I'm going to skip that section. I don't want to unlock further resources. I feel like they're proficient enough. Same again for composition and grammar. Now for punctuation, the last level was level 1. So, if we're wanting to put this candidate through for a level 2 exam, it doesn't make sense for them to just practice level 1 resources, as mandatory as that is. So we'll bump that up to be the level above what it was previously. For spelling, now, even though the last level was level 2, I know this learner personally and they struggled with it. So I'm going to put level 2 again, just to unlock further resources for them to practice, just to make sure they're the most prepared that they can be for their actual exam. Okay, so like, you started to see the process from start to finish now. So you create the learners, you'll assign them the relevant courses, and they'll gain access to following assessments, that being screening, IA, diagnostic. They'll then get a bespoke set of resources to practice, in which you'll be able to clarify that they've retained that information by making them do a distance travelled assessment. In the event they hadn't retained the relevant skills, you can repeat the process by adding a new diagnostic attempt and setting it to be the level above what it was previously to unlock further resources for that learner to practice. Okay, and that in a nutshell is the skills builder product, from the point of view of a learner and the tutor. Now, aside from the things that I've showed you today, I think that, to make a deal of the fact that everything I showed you today was on an individual basis. So a lot of the users on today's session may be quite daunted by that because, as I appreciate, colleges have a huge caseload of learners, and so do various training providers out there in the sector. So when you are setting up these learners and tutors, you can allocate something that's called a group, which will specify every single student within that group and then the tutor that oversees that. Okay. Now, we have the intelligence to break that up into subject within your group. So that'd be in English, Maths and ICT. And as a tutor, you'll be able to dive into any subject tile and view your learners by bulk. So as you can see, I can view results, skills plans, targets, group need overview, all by bulk. Okay, so I'm just going to take a couple of moments to click each tab and show you what that looks like. You see the results tab gives you line by line, learner by learner, split by the different courses and the assessment attempts that they've encountered. So from the click of a button, you can see your whole caseload of learners and their overall working towards level and progress. So it's really, really powerful. And one thing that's worth mentioning is in our assessments, we have ALN indicators. So if anybody's showing possible signs of dyslexia, dyscalculia, or any sort of disadvantage of that nature, it will flag up in the assessment. And you know, that's not us diagnosing your learners as dyslexic or dyscalculic. It's just a little indicator for your organization to show some additional attention to that individual. So on this page, you'll be able to select show ALN flags, additional learning need, press update, and we can see any users that may have had that. Now, obviously on this demo account, no users had, but you know, it's quite a powerful tool in terms of keeping on top of who's disadvantaged and who needs that extra support. Again, diving into a subject tab by bulk, you can also see skills plans. So if you are ever, you know, asking yourself what progress are my learners making in relation to the resources, with the click of a button, you can see each learner line by line and the relevant percentage of progress that they've made. So we can be using this as almost like a big brother tool. So I might want to get on the phone to Luke as he's not making the relevant progression that I'm expecting from him. So, you know, that phone call would sound something like the following: please, can you get back onto the Skills Forward platform and continue practicing your individual skills plan? We're falling behind and, you know, we've got stuff to achieve, I imagine. Another tool that you might want to use is a group need overview and also a progress overview. They almost feed side by side. So if you wanted to create groups on the platform and load all of your learners into the groups, you'll be able to click this progress overview tab and get a breakdown of all of the learners' progress in relation to each level of, you know, functional skills. So I can see entry level 1 through to entry level 2, all of my learners on the side of the page and the relevant percentage of progression that they've made in those particular levels. Okay, so that, you know, it's a nice sort of credible piece of data for a tutor to interpret, and that can also be downloaded in the form of a CSV report. So you can showcase that to external parties such as your manager, supervisor, Ofsted, Ofqual, completely up to you. You know, it is deeper than that though. So if you wanted a more in-depth analysis of the group need, so, you know, within those particular levels, what resources are learners practicing and what resources aren't the learners practicing. And you might want to use that data to motivate your carousel learning. So the next time that you have a webinar session with your learners, or, you know, a similar sort of training session, you can click into your group need and see exactly what the learners are practicing versus what they're not practicing. So I can see straight away the comprehension task seems to be quite popular, with a lot of candidates making the relevant progression in that particular unit. Whereas when we look at the writing practice exercises and the spelling exercises, a lot of learners are being reluctant to practice those sort of topics. So we've got 0% in the topic completion. So, you know, I really like this tool personally because it makes your delivery of learning a little bit more effective. So if you can see where learners are maybe not showing the most attention in terms of, you know, we're trying to avoid composition because it's hard, you can recognize that on the platform and use that data to motivate your carousel learning to get them on that, you know, sort of particular topic that they're avoiding, as it'll probably be most effective coming from yourself as opposed to independent learning at that point. So, you know, it's more than just the initial assessment and the resources. There's also quite a bit of credible data that you can get from it, to be honest. And you can also use this data to influence your delivery for upcoming years. So, you know, what people are getting on with and what people aren't. And that, in effect, is the Skills Forward platform. So if you do have any questions or queries as a result of that, you can get in touch directly at 0300 102 1023 or contact us on the following email address, which is info@skillsforward.co.uk. And that's me. Thank you very much for your time today, everybody.
Hello, Callum. Sorry, before you go, we have had a question come in around how do you set up the group for your own learners?
Okie dokie. So the accounts that I've showed you today is only from a student and a tutor perspective. Now, as well as the two accounts, you have an admin account that we've not actually visited today. So in terms of how you add groups, it's all specified on a manual that I can get sent out to you if you've got an interest. But it's essentially 3 steps. You click groups, add a new group, specify a title, and save that particular group. Okay. I can show you that visually if we have the time for that today. Do we have the time for that, do you think?
Yeah, if it's as simple as you make it sound, you've got the software there, so it would be good.
So as you can see, in order to add a group, you simply click groups, add group, and the only mandatory field on this page is the first sort of, you know, bar. So you specify the title of your group and update, and here is where you'll be able to start feeding your accounts into the platform. So bearing in mind that your learners and tutors already exist, you'll be able to click add user, tag them from this list, click forward and specify the role, whether that's a tutor or a student.
Fantastic. That is simple then, isn't it? And quite instinctive. Fab, I have another question for you, Callum. You don't get away so quickly. Can you access the learning they have completed in order to, well, that your learners have completed, in order to have a look and see where they're having problems?
Definitely. So I think you can. Yeah, I think you can utilize that sort of group need overview tool that I've just sort of showed you there in order to achieve that. But also, on every single learner's ISP, in relation to the topics that they've practiced, they'll have a view completed button, and that'll go into depth about the attempt that they have actually had. So after clicking view completed, I can see the relevant attempts here and the percentage that they got in relation to that particular topic, and I can view the report to then get a more in-depth breakdown as to what they got correct and what they got incorrect. And as a tutor, I'll be able to show the correct answer to relay that support back to the learner.
Oh, fantastic. So you can actually see, so you can position the feedback and give them the additional support.
Indeed. And you can see the time taken, so you can sort of see how
Brilliant.
much attention they're actually applying to it.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I think that's all the questions we've got had in at the moment. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to pass you back over to Dan. Did you want to say a word before we go back to Scott?
Yeah, I think just, thank you for everyone's time and patience. I appreciate there was a bit of background noise throughout some of that. So I do apologise. We're still, very much operational as a business, albeit socially distanced. So, we have colleagues spread across what is quite an open plan office, facilitating other demos and webinars. So I appreciate we're working through different times than we would be used to. So thank you for your patience on that. It's a privilege, and as a fellow of the IEP to showcase the products that are in Skills Forward. And we have got some other webinars in the future, which will look into some of our other products, which is Skills Work, and that's our employability diagnostic and resources, and then Skills Review, which is aimed towards the apprenticeship market in terms of how to assess the knowledge, skills and behaviours within the standards and progress. So, unless there's any more questions, that's us. And again, it's been a privilege to showcase that to you today. And I'll hand back over to Scott.
Hi everyone, thank you very much, Dan and Callum. Really interesting, and yeah, thanks Dan. It's always difficult doing these things at home. You have children running around. I've been in webinars and that. Then obviously in an operational office, you're very busy and busier than ever, I expect as well. So really excited about this case. I'm a big fan of Skills Forward, got some great products and facilities, and I've learned something today in terms of how straightforward and easy that platform is to use. I mean, I'm of the opinion that if I were able to use it, then pretty much anyone could use it. So thanks very much, Callum, and a really good, thorough go through of the system and the platform there. So thank you very much for that. Just all I want to say now is, everyone, once again, stay safe, stay well. Make sure you're connecting with the IEP. Head on over to the IEP website, learn more about what we're doing. Some really great things coming up. And also, we've had some brilliant webinars over the last 13, 14 weeks. Get yourself over to the IEP YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the chat there. Make sure that you subscribe and you get access to those things. There's some really interesting learning there, mental health coaching, employer engagement, platforms, online learning, various different activity in there. And I think you'll find some real value from that if you go and review those things again. And clearly, some of those will be of interest to your clients, whether you're serving them and supporting them remotely, or whether you're supporting them very soon on a face-to-face activity. And may well be some of those I've shared with my family as well, particularly around anxiety over COVID and things like that. And I think there's a real benefit in that. So get yourself over to the YouTube channel, get yourself over to the IEP. Thanks again to Callum and Dan, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.